Hey guys, welcome back. I've got my friend Shane Unruh with me, and I'm so excited to introduce you to him. I've gotten to know him recently. We actually met at the gym, was how we met. As he was walking into the gym, I was behind, and he had a 10X Growth Con backpack on, and so that's how we got our conversation started. And as I learned about Shane, learned that he'd been into real estate investing, and then as I got to know him a little bit better, I'm so excited to introduce you to him because him and his wife Kelsa, they're a young couple and have become very successful at a very young age. And I want you to hear their story. And I love how there's so many different ways to wealth and there's so many different ways to creating a great life. So I'm excited. Thanks, Shane. I appreciate you being here.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. The conference thing, we came to your Vibe Hire and I was very pleasantly surprised. We didn't have any expectations going in, didn't know what it was about, and it was great. Me and my wife both had an unreal
awesome,
time
man.
and learned lots.
It's good. I really appreciate you being there. It was great to have you. Everybody, just to give a bit of a background, Shane runs Excess Management, which is a real estate investment company, correct? You can correct me along the way for anything. And I know you guys started out with nothing and have built that up to, I think, over 300 properties now, correct?
Yeah. Just under 300 now, yeah.
Just under 300. Cool. So before we jump into that and maybe some tips on how people can build their way to wealth, I'd love to hear more of your story and how did this all come about?
Yeah, so I'll go way back, just briefly touch on my upbringing because it's slightly different. I was born and raised in northern Manitoba in a Mennonite community, so a lot different than most people. You know, we didn't have any TV, no radio, nothing like that. They have their own school system, so I was actually the first one in my entire family to go past grade 9. Both my parents were grade 8. I went on to high school pretty much only to play football.
Okay.
That was kind of the dream back then. We got into business. Our first venture, we farmed our whole life. Our first venture was a gym.
And you and your wife both farmed?
So she was from Alberta. She moved out to Manitoba and we farmed together. Yeah, with my family.
She's Mennonite as well, or no?
No, she was not. No, I went already. What happened? Yeah, I can rewind that a little bit. So we right about that grade 8, grade 9, my parents had split up, and so we had left the church. So that's why I did carry on. And,
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Before we jump into your business story, just out of curiosity, what would you say, how has that impacted who you are today? In what ways?
You know, there's a lot of good stuff. For one, the school system itself was so different. Like it went to grade 9, but when I transferred to high school, you know, we had already done grade 11, 12 work in grade 9. Yeah. Kind of the whole community aspect's really cool. Like they start working basically grade 9, they're starting working. So they're farming, construction stuff. So that side of it's cool. And then, you know, I think there's a lot that ties into a lot of the visualization and some of that stuff. They would call it religion. You know, there's a faith or a belief. And I think there's a lot of stuff like that as far as just having good morals and stuff. I mean, it's great. I'm not in it anymore. It's not for me, but there wasn't a lot of downsides. I think it definitely helped make me who I am today. And there's a lot of good morals. So
that's cool, man. That's cool. So now you're done high school.
Yep. Yeah. So at that point we were planning to farm. I always had a big love for the gym. I used to come out to Alberta and work in the winters, just drive truck and different stuff. And there was really no gym in the community we're in. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of our first venture in. We built, owned and operated a gym for 6 years. And we actually ended up selling it right when COVID happened. So we can get into that later, but that was perfect timing. And then from there, we quit farming. We got into real estate actually through mobile home parks. Okay. I had read an article in Forbes. It was called Mobile Home Park Millionaires, and just fate or luck would have it, the one in our town went up for sale. And I dug in and just loved it. I fell in love with the business right there. And so we jumped right in, bought a big park. It was 18 acres or something. So it was a big handful, very run down, tough crowd in there. Jumped right in. We did that. We bought a second park at tax auction 2 years later, and then pretty quickly realized we couldn't scale mobile home parks. So that's when we transitioned into apartment buildings. And,
Crazy. So going back to the gym, just to give everybody background. So you guys, did the gym already exist and you bought it, or you built the gym?
No, we built it. So that was a whole.
You built it. Okay.
Yeah, that was honestly probably the first big manifestation of my life was we wanted that gym, and about 2 weeks before we had to pour the concrete because it was coming into winter, the guy backed out. And we were in a place that didn't have a lot of contractors, and I called every single one and was waiting for a call back. And I probably told myself 1,000 times a day, like, we're going to get this done. We're going to get this done. And we got the call, and yeah, built it. And it was a big risk. I mean, it was a small town, didn't think it would work. A lot of people didn't think it would work because there hadn't been anything like it. Yeah. And it ended up, it was really successful. We lived there at the beginning pretty much. We were open. It was, 7 days a week, 12-hour days.
And that was you and your wife running it the whole time?
Yeah, that was me and my wife. Yeah. It was kind of a funny story. That gym was called Fit 24/7, and it had never been closed ever. So they had key fob access. We made a decision. We were actually at a conference in the States right when COVID was starting to happen, and we made the decision to sell and move out to Edmonton, where we are now. Yeah. And the day that we handed the keys over was the first week of the first 2 weeks to flatten the curve. So timing wise, that was the first time that gym had been open. And
I know you shared that story with me, and I was just so amazed. And it's so interesting how you can tell these different pivotal moments in your life where I believe anyways that you're just destined for different things, like it's such a crazy story when Shane tells that literally the keys were given. They just sold the business, handed over the keys, and then lockdowns the next day. Yeah. Right. So a week difference or 2 weeks or whatever it might have been, then you guys would be stuck with the gym.
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of everything. I mean, our house sold right then, and it was, and we literally, we had a 5-year plan to move. We were going to wait 5 years, and we went down to this conference, and I think this one was in Vegas. And there was a little part in it where the guy said, he's like, if you're not in a place where you're growing, he's like, you're not a tree, you don't have roots. He said, you can get up and leave. And me and my wife have a conversation, and we got home, and I'm like, look, the business is as good as it's ever going to be. We're never going to grow it 10 times in this town. So we made that decision pretty quickly and talked to some people that we knew were interested in it. Again, if we waited 1 month, they were like, hey, let's think about it for a couple months or see what happens with COVID, because it was just coming, and that we probably would have never moved. And so
wow. And at that time, did you guys still own the mobile parks?
Yeah. And initially the plan was to keep them. I love that business. It just, again, you couldn't really scale it, but you just own the land. You don't own the actual trailers. So we had put a ton of.
Just to interrupt you for a second, when you say you loved the business, tell me why. What was it that you loved about it?
Well, I love business in general, but the actual model is pretty cool because you own the land, you don't own the property, and it's really too expensive for the person to ever move. So a lot of the trailers are older; they're not worth a lot. It's thousands of dollars to move it. So if someone defaults or doesn't pay their rent, you know where they're going to be. They're not going to leave their trailer. So it's a good way that way. And it was a lot of fun. Because we spent so terrible much time building that up, my wife's water broke. We were reading water at the trailer park, and 2 weeks later we were there renovating a trailer. So we spent our kids grew up, and so it was, I enjoyed it. It was outdoors. Once we had moved, it got a little trickier. Because we had someone managing it, and then we fell in love with what we're doing here. So there wasn't the sentimental side.
You sold them.
Yeah, we sold them about a year after we moved. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I interrupted what you were saying there. I just was curious about that. Yeah.
No, that's fine. I don't even know where I was going with it, but
yeah, I think when you guys have made the decision to move, you had the guy tell you, hey, you're not a tree. You can pick up and move.
Yeah. So like I said, we came home. The gym sold pretty much right away, and then our house, it was a very similar thing. We listed it, and that COVID, it was a little bit after, and COVID was just coming, and we got a really good offer. So we decided to sell it, and the dad of the girl buying it came to me, and he's like, look, he said, I don't want to have to buy her all new furniture. Like, just leave the furniture. So I'm like, okay, cool. So he wrote me a check, and then he came back the next day, and he's like, I don't want to buy anything. He said, I want you to leave the dishes and the cutlery. He said, leave the food in the fridge. He said, just go. So we moved out. We moved to Edmonton right during the first lockdown with a little trailer. We had our kids' stuff and some clothes, and that was pretty much it. We drove in on the hen day, and you probably went 2 kilometers without seeing a car. So it was interesting time to move for sure. But
Yeah, I guess. So how old were your kids?
well, I'm not good at age. 1 and 3, I guess. Would have
Okay,
been. Yeah.
cool. So young family. So you come to Edmonton. You guys just sold the business. You just sold everything. And then what were your next steps?
Yeah, so we moved out here. We knew we had actually purchased 2 small 8 unit properties out here already, so we had a little bit of here. So
Hmm.
we had the money from the business, and we were looking to. We knew we wanted to get into apartment buildings. That was what we wanted.
Hmm.
Um, so again, the timing was pretty much perfect because we had all time low interest rates, and
Hmm.
everyone had backed out of the market. So we came in. Generally, in bigger commercial real estate, it is harder to get in front of that line because they have a list of buyers that are going to get first dibs.
Hmm.
We came in at a time when that list wasn't there. So the first 2 deals we bought, there had been guys leave hard money on the table and walk away from it because they no one knew. Like maybe the
Yeah.
world ends, we don't know.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
were, whether it was naive or whatever the case was, but we were looking to buy. So and there was some issues there. Like because of COVID, you couldn't get into units. So the first thing we bought was a townhome complex. It was 27 townhomes,
Hmm.
and I think on the rent roll there was 2 empty, and we took it over and there were 7. So that's a huge difference in on a unit that size. That's a big difference. We had
For
7
sure
to
it is.
renovate fully, and so again, we basically, I got all these pictures. We brought the playpens, and our kids, they were there. We were there every single day for all day, and pretty much we at that time we were doing all the renovations and everything ourselves. So we stayed at the
Yeah.
properties and
Yeah. I think it's really cool. I think it's cool how you and your wife have built this all together. And, often when people get into business, whatever kind of entrepreneurial journey they're on, I mean, the reality is it's more work, it's more hours, it's more everything, right? Than a typical job. And many people, they resist that. Whereas you embraced it. I mean, when you got your first gym, you're living at the gym essentially, right? You and your wife running it together. Why do you think, or maybe what's helped you guys as a couple? Because some people think, and my wife and I work together, so I know my answers, but I'm curious from your perspective, how has that worked well for you guys, or what have you done to make that work well as building that together?
yeah. You know what? I heard someone say this one time, and I think it's pretty accurate. It's like if you start a business together, it's like having a kid, but you're not leaving it up to fate. You're choosing exactly what you're wanting, right? So one thing that worked really well with me and my wife is we have very different, I guess, personalities. So I'm outgoing, I'm the big picture guy, whatever. She's very analytical. So
Hmm.
she loves all the back end stuff that I could not and would not do. I do not
Hmm.
like it.
Hmm.
So systems processes, that's all
Yeah.
her.
Hmm.
I'm the networking, the big picture. But yeah, it's was it always easy? Not at all. There's lots of times when it's just you don't have any. You're together all the time. When you're
Right.
working 12
Yeah.
hours a day and you have 2 kids with you, there, it's just there. It's hard. But I always think, I guess with the work life balance, I always say that there's times when maybe priority is the wrong word, but your business is going to need more energy, and there's
Yeah.
times when your relationship does, and it
Yeah.
doesn't always. It's not always a perfect balance, and
Yeah.
we always. I think the thing that always kept us on the same page was our vision or the goal of where we wanted to go.
Yeah.
Was It was in the future, and it was very, we both knew what that was.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, hey, we're gonna be doing this the rest of our lives,
Yeah.
and so I
What
think
do you
that.
what do you love the most about your life now? So there's like that intense all the time kind of period of your life, and now where you're today. What do you love the most?
You know what? I love that part of my life. I'm still, I love everything about my life. Honestly, I got a great family, but I enjoy what I do now. So the
Mm-hmm.
buying of the property and
Mm-hmm.
the whole structuring the investment, so it makes a lot of sense for the investor, and it makes sense for us. And the network grows, and then the type of people you're networking with is totally different now than it was when we moved. And um, yeah, I don't know. I don't. Again, we're very much those people. We're like, you know, well, today's an example. My wife's 2 weeks away from her due date. She's doing, and she wouldn't have to, but she chose to go with the guys that do. We're doing like annual inspections in the building. So she's
Mm-hmm.
walking a 96 unit building,
Yeah.
and she was selling 50/50s or volunteered to sell them at the Oiler game last night. So like, we're
Yeah.
just, I mean, the work part, we're always doing it. I think that's for me
Yeah.
when I'm the most happy is when I have something that we're going towards. I
Yeah.
get very, very unsettled if I don't
Yeah.
if we're just plateaued. Yeah.
I feel the same way. And I think a big part of your guys' success too is that, there's all the things you've talked about, and you love what you're doing and what you're working towards. So many people I find, especially if they've been employees a large part of their life. I was on the plane yesterday flying back from Toronto at like midnight last night. And the lady I was talking to her about financial planning, and, we were chatting about what she does. She works up north, and she goes, "So when do you want to retire? Or when are you going to retire?" And I said, "Well, I do what I've told you. I got a seminar company, speaking company too. I mean, I have zero desire to retire. I love what I do." And she goes, "Yeah, it's a little bit different doing that than doing what I'm doing." And so when people are stuck in that, they're doing something they don't want to do. That is something you don't want to work at, you know? Yeah. But you guys found the success of finding what you love. I want to share with people, because you've done some, in my view anyways, some pretty cool stuff in the real estate world, more than most people are ever going to do in their lives. So I'd love to hear some ideas for people, because many people listening, they're thinking, hey, how do I create more different income streams? Maybe they'd like to get into real estate investing in different ways. And so what would be, if I had Shane's quick do's and don'ts, or here's where I would start, maybe that's a better question. I've got my business or my job right now. I've got money coming in. I want to get into the real estate world. What do you recommend?
Yeah, I think the first thing, and where a lot of people maybe make a mistake, is decide what you want out of it. Is it going to be your full-time thing, or is it going to be an investment? And those are two totally different things. If it's an investment, you're finding a group or you're finding a person that will help you with it. If you want it to be your full-time thing, that's different. But what I tell people is, like, here's a quick little story of how our first 8-unit building went. So we took it over. It had a very good rent subsidy program in there. So all the rents were guaranteed, vacancy rates guaranteed. Everything was great. Take the building over. Within a couple months, the government canceled that program. So then you're like, ooh, now the rents are going to come down. We're not covered on vacancy. Not a big deal. Great tenant base still. They're all in there. They're grandfathered in. And then within, I think, like 6 months, 3 of the 8 tenants died. And so it's like, now you have huge cleanup costs, and you have all these things that were not expected, right?
Yeah.
And then we had the boiler go, and we had the hot water tanks go. And we had a lady call because her cabinet door had fall off. She called the health and safety instead of calling us. They went to look, and the railings were 1/8 of an inch too wide. So we had to put new railings in. So, and I tell that story not to like discourage people from ever doing it, but the reality is, if you're working a full-time job and getting all those calls and pumping money into that building, probably not the look you're
probably
going
not
for.
The right strategy.
But if you want to do it as like, hey, I want to learn the business, like we knew going in. So it was like, we never had that headache of, hey, this all sucks. We were like, hey, the vision's bigger, right?
Yeah. You guys have been running the mobile home parks too. So you had lots of experience with that kind of stuff as well.
That's right. So I don't know. For me, you want to do it with enough scale that it makes sense. So the tough part is when people want to get in, they usually only have enough money for a small property. Small properties, it's much, much harder to make money on, because you have 4 units and one person leaves, you're 25% vacant. No one underwrites for that, right? So you want to either, in my opinion, and I think you either invest with someone or groups that are doing it until you can get to that level, or at least make the determination that you want to do it full time is kind of the big thing. But
what are your thoughts on someone, and I'm an amateur in real estate investing, we own a few properties, but amateur with it, on like if they do they buy their home and they do top and bottom suite and renting out that way. How do you feel about that kind of structure?
And again, it kind of depends what you want. Are you wanting it because you want a nicer house and you need to help pay the mortgage? Probably makes sense. The one thing with top bottom, and we did have one initially. I actually have a house that has a suite. We just keep it for when guests are there, but the basement. But it's generally like that. Just my opinion. A lot of people won't long term want to stay in a basement suite. There's no sunlight, and it's very like you can feel that you're down there. And or there's issues with like up down tenant. The worst problem in the city with doing that, though, unless you're in like a very different neighborhood, there's almost nowhere where there's parking that permits it. So they give all these permits out, and like our house, for example, we have a driveway that can fit one vehicle, and there's no street parking. So if someone lived in our basement, they either park behind us or they all those things are things where, like, on paper they're a great investment. It's like, oh, we make all this money. In reality, though, have I seen a lot of people do it to scale and it work good? Not personally. I'm sure there's people that do, though. It looks very good on paper, though.
Yeah, cool. Can I ask you some other questions? These are just things I've heard
Yeah,
of, and again, very
all of
amateur
them.
with
Yeah,
it.
go ahead.
Um, I don't know anyone personally that's done it, but I've heard several people talk to me about where they build the suite on the garage. But yeah, what
Yeah,
about that model? What do you think?
yeah, people do it too. But again, it's. I
Same
mean,
issues, I guess.
it's the same issue. The city is really big on their 2 million people inside the ring road is what that pushes. So they're permitting everything that can go.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you want someone living in your backyard, and there's all those things. So it's like who has the yard? So our
yeah,
neighbor did that. They have a split like similar to our house, and
yeah,
they split the backyard with a fence. And
yeah,
now we can see back there. One side they don't
yeah.
take care of it, and there's tall grass, and so there's all the things that come along with it. And then it's like at the end of the day, what is the goal? Is it just is it that $1,000 a month? Because you could invest $100,000 somewhere else and get that thousand. Is it
Right.
that you actually want a tenant there? Or,
Yeah.
are you trying to sell it and make money? Because then you're selling to an investor. I,
Yeah.
for just this is my and this has been my experience as well. But if you're not doing real estate at scale, it you're going to get the appreciation and stuff on single family houses. But my personal opinion is it needs to be enough scale that it can it can weather vacancy. It can and that's the thing too is if you want to build your rental portfolio up with grad suites or duplexes, just imagine the logistics. So we just
Sure.
bought a 111 unit property.
Hmm.
We can go take care of 5 complaints. We have 2 roofs, we have a pool, we
Right.
have all
Right.
this stuff. If we had
Yeah.
100 single family homes spread out in Edmonton, we'd need 10 people to go do that every day.
Totally.
So
Totally. Yeah.
scale is kind of the great equalizer. Commercial real estate is valued different than houses, so it's all valued on your net income and then the cap rate they give you. So the problem what I don't like about all those things you just mentioned is you're going to sell that based on what the 2 houses next to you sold for, essentially, right? So if there's 3 houses exactly the same, you're kind of the value of the 2 beside you.
Hmm.
Commercial real estate is directly related to your net income. So if we get net income, every $1 we get the income up, one single dollar adds $17 of value to that property.
Hmm.
So if you're good at managing, that's an easy, you add $10 of rent to 100 units. That's a massive number. You do that every year for 10 years. That's huge wealth creation. That's not risky. That's not me guessing that the housing price is going to go up or interest rates are going to come down. This is just like, hey, here's the model.
Mm-hmm.
It's safe. It's secure. It's not, I'm not trying to get rich tomorrow. We want over time, we want to build wealth. So I think there's just a disconnect between real estate's like, hey, we're real estate investors and that's everybody.
Right.
And there's like 20 genres. There's fix and flip people. There's,
Yeah.
so it's slightly different, but you can make money at all of them, I'm sure, but they're not my personal favorite or wheelhouse, I guess.
Cool. Let's talk a bit about that idea. You said, okay, well, maybe that's not you. You don't want a full-time job. You don't want to do that. So then they do want to get into real estate investing, and that concept of like those pooled ones or group ones. Give me the basic rundown and idea of that.
Yeah, so there's 100 different kinds. I can tell you kind of how ours is structured, and I'm not trying to, and there's not saying ours is the way to do it or not.
Yeah.
We essentially run a limited partnership, and so we structured it that way for the main benefit of the depreciation flows down to the investors. So when people come in, everyone's pooled together. We also do it as a fund instead of on single assets, because on a single asset, you can have a bad year, the roof goes, and if it's pooled over hundreds of units, it makes it a lot more secure. So we structure it that way. So someone comes in as a limited partner, there's no risk to them, like as if they bought their own property, the general partnership holds liability. And then, but you still get the benefits of mortgage pay down, you get the appreciation, and then the depreciation flows through. So if we pay distributions, it's return of capital, and the depreciation washes away the income. Probably getting too technical, but it's very similar to owning. It's just like, would you rather own 10% of 100 units or 100% of 10 units? And what's more secure? What's that runway look like over 10 years? Which one can make more money? And then it's also like, who are you going to manage it? The problem with a 10 unit building, let's say it produces $1 million a year, you're paying someone 5% management fee. That's $5,000. So how much care are you getting out of that? $5,000 a month. It's so you get a lot. I think that just with scale is what I like, and I think you're better to own a small part of a big property. That's
Cool.
my bias, though,
That's
opinion.
awesome, man. That's really awesome. You've got a podcast more specific to real estate investing as well, correct?
Yeah, real estate investment. It's called Scaling Up, and it's about, yeah. I love all business. We brought in people from all over, but
Yeah.
real estate's kind of my passion for sure. So
Cool. I love it. Everybody, if you're wanting to get more, check out Shane's podcast for sure, Scaling Up. I got a question for you, switching back to, you told the story of, 3 tenants died, then this happened, then this happened, this happened. I'm just curious because everybody deals, everyone gets things that come up in their life that can cause stress. How do you manage stress? What are strategies that you use for yourself personally?
um, you know what? I just rarely get very stressed about things myself. That's just my personality type. But I do a lot. I do reading, working out's been there for me forever. So that's something I do every day that I think helps.
Yeah.
As far as like physical stuff, it's like working out. I do cold showers and stuff.
Yeah.
But as far as, you know what, I don't get terribly stressed when it's stuff like business and stuff. And one thing that really kind of changed my life, I talked to a guy one day, and his daughter had just got like a pretty regular like cold, and they went to the hospital, and turns out it was something way worse. And she ended up couldn't walk, nothing. And like every time I think of that story, I'm like, there could be nothing in my life that could be that bad. Like unless it happens to my kids, my life is awesome. Yeah. So it's like everything else bad. Yeah. And then I always work things the wrong way. When things like that happen and you get stressed, I say, okay, what's the absolute worst case is what? Like really, those people die, we lose money for a while, we put some money in. The runway is long. I have 20 years to hold that building if I want to.
Yeah.
Then it doesn't look so bad. So just getting outside the moment and lengthening the runway.
I love that. But I mean, those two strategies are great strategies, what you were talking about. One is contrast, right? Like, we all think our problems are such a big problem until you realize that story of his daughter that, can't walk anymore. I mean, who cares? I lost a tenant, the railing needs to get fixed. I lost the business deal, who cares, right? In the grand scheme. And then that perspective of is, really, does this matter in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? So, I mean, those are great things that you do probably, a little unconsciously, just step into them and do them. Not a big deal, right? Not a big deal. It's awesome, man. I think the entrepreneurial journey, no matter what the path, I think is the best personal growth tool. One of the things I've loved our conversations, I think probably why we connected right away too, is that although you guys have been on a business path for a long time and building some great success there, you've been heavy into your own ongoing growth and development too. So maybe as we begin to close today, do you want to share the impact of, I guess, how you guys have invested, not just into assets, but into yourselves and the impact and what that's made in your life?
Yeah. I'm all for it. It pretty much at every step of my life, it started with books, and I would read books and you would take little things from there. And then actually it was right even before we moved, I took a real estate course, and we didn't have a lot of money still at that time. And it was, I think, like $5,000. And that was the hardest $5,000 I probably spent in my life. And we took away, and I didn't take away a whole bunch and all, but I took away one, little thing about the way they finance their deals that clicked with me, and that changed the way we did things. And that's made us, endless amounts of money and stuff. And even with our business now, like when we came here and set it and set our business up, I said from the beginning, I said, here's our goal. We want 100 million in assets by the end of 2024. And at the beginning, people are probably thinking you're a joke because you have no assets and whatever. But what it did do is anyone who is in our company today did buy into that, and they knew that there's room in there for them. So it's not like we're just going to run a small business and they're going to cap out here. There's really an endless runway, because that's only in the first 3 years. So we're halfway to that goal today, and we're halfway in time as well. So we've hit our half. So had we not said that, put that goal out there for the public and made it quite public and told all the brokers and everyone we worked with, would we have got there? I'm not really sure. So, and it's still today we're doing, like we did your seminar, we did, we go down to the States and do a lot of stuff, and it's, I think it's one of the biggest things. So
I think it's awesome, man. I as soon as you said it started with the book, this idea flashed in my mind of even giving people advice of start where you are, right? Like maybe you're just on your journey. You got no cash. Anybody can afford a book. Start with books, start with YouTube, start with podcast. Probably you can get some courses after that, and eventually get into the live events, right? And I know this because you've experienced it. It's what you're learning at those but then I imagine some of the connections you've made at those events too end up being very significant. I know it's been the same for me for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's you get a network with a lot of cool people, and it gets you out of your comfort zone. And yeah, I'm all for any kind of form of self education. I always say to you, ask how to start investing. I would say, if unless you have a good amount, but if you have $10,000 or something, I would say invest that in yourself. Like get a skill, get something, and it can be, how to. Like the first book I ever bought or that I really, really took away from was How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that was like one of my, that was a $10 book probably, but invest in yourself. And I think then you're a product that the world wants. And I think it all gets a lot easier. That's something no one can take from you. Inflation doesn't eat away at your skills or anything. So
well said. Yeah, really well said. I love it, man. Where can people connect to it? Where's the best spot you want them to go to?
You know what? I'm probably the most active on Instagram. So it's, if you go like Scaling Up, or if you put in Shane Unruh, there'll be my personal account, which is just me scaring my kids. But if you go to you'll see Scaling Up one, and that's my business one. I'm the most active there. Or cool. Excess Asset Management. I'm on that account as well. And that's our website as well. So
great. We'll have that link to everybody below for you. But Shane, hey, I appreciate the time, man. I've loved our chat. Look forward to spending more and more time together. And everybody, listen, if you liked today, go connect with Shane, check out his podcast, learn some more. Appreciate you being here. Shane, thanks again, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it.